The cost of IT in business can be staggering. From hardware and software expenses to services like internet and phone, you don't need to spend a fortune on IT to succeed. If your organization spends more than $500 monthly on any service, or you're considering signing a long-term contract, IT Enabled can help you manage your technology and minimize your costs. Contact us today to schedule a free consultation. IT Enabled, we're here to help.
Hi, I'm Tara Watson-Watkins, President and CEO of the Lufkin Angelina County Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the Connect podcast, connecting business with the community. I'm here today with my co-host, Blake Pollino with BP Media Group.
Welcome back to the show. This week we have Landon Lohmann of Corrigan OSB here to talk about some of the amazing timber products that happen right here in our backyard. We live here in the Piney Woods. It's really cool to see how specifically these trees work into our economy and the environment and sustainability, and some really cool things in this episode.
Landon, we're so excited to have you. Corrigan OSB is a fairly new investor with the Chamber, but y'all do so much for the area. So why don't you let the listeners know a little bit about your background, and then we can talk about what the business is.
Yeah, so like you said, we're new to this area. Our company is mainly based in Alexandria, Louisiana. And so I have kind of a unique position. It's owned by my family. So I'm fifth generation Martin, who started the company in 1923.
Mm-hmm. So Roy, let me make sure I'm saying this correctly for this. So RoyO'Martin is the same as Corrigan OSB.
It is kind of weird with the name. RoyO'Martin is kind of our trade name.
Okay.
And then Martco is our manufacturing business.
Okay.
And so Corrigan is a subsidiary of Martco.
Okay. Well, when I said that and then I looked down at my notes, I thought, surely I didn't call this by the wrong name, but then I'm seeing both. Come on back, Chris.
Even I get mixed up because I just say RoyO'Martin.
Yeah.
So for those not familiar with the organization, tell us what you do. What do you produce? Kind of walk us through that.
So our company is really a timber land company. We own 570,000 acres in Louisiana. So we're the largest private landowner in Louisiana. And so the whole idea of our company is, we've got all this timber with sustainable forestry practices. We grow timber at, amazing rates. But the idea is, how do we convert this timber to cash? And really one of the best ways we found is through panels. And so we have a plywood facility in Louisiana. We have OSB facility in Louisiana, and then so Corrigan OSB is our newest addition to that also manufactures OSB, and so we're really in the housing and panel industry.
So what is OSB for people who are not familiar?
Oriented strand board. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a new product that came online in the 80s. It used to be called wafer board, but typically everyone would produce plywood, which is what houses were built out of. But to produce plywood, you have to have like a 32-inch block of wood or timber, which is, pretty enormous, and it's hard to get those blocks consistently. So once you do get those, you have a lot of waste because all that smaller stuff you can't peel on a lathe. And so in the 80s, came up with wafer board, and it's basically you're going to take pulpwood and strand it into, little flakes of wood, and then glue them together. And actually, it's just as strong as plywood when you do it in an oriented fashion. So OSB is oriented strand board, meaning the top and bottom layer are in one direction, and then the middle is in the opposite. Mm-hmm. So you gain deflection strength with that. So that's what OSB is, and it's kind of really taken over the housing industry just because it's so much cheaper, because you're using that pulpwood. Yeah. Whereas, plywood is still necessary, especially in construction, large concrete forming and stuff like that. But it's a lot more expensive to make. Mm-hmm. So the housing industry has really shifted to OSB.
Now, is the OSB, and I do not know the answer to this at all, is the OSB the same that y'all are producing that like Sterling is using for their mats that they're doing. Is that OSB as well?
Yeah, they use it's not just housing that uses it. That's their primary use. But yeah, mats, they use it for that. Several under other industries.
So do y'all work together? Like, do you supply things for them and they supply things for you, or is it totally complete?
It's totally separate. We really only supply to distributors.
Okay.
And then these companies will buy from those distributors.
Okay.
So
Interesting. So when you walk into any hardware store and buy a piece of OSB that's come from Corrigan, so that came from here and then went through a distributor and then is sold to whoever those hardware stores are?
yeah, McCoy's is a local example of a distributor who will buy from us, and hardware stores will buy from McCoy's typically. Or we're not in Home Depot or Lowe's. We found that to be a little bit it's tougher.
Yeah.
So we kind of got out of that industry. So we just go local to distributors.
Nice.
And actually, we actually export too. Our stuff is all around the world. We export to Europe, and then actually a lot of the stuff that comes out of our mill in Corrigan, Texas, ends up in California.
Okay.
Interesting.
California has a pretty good economy. So does Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada. So we send a lot of product out there.
So you said you were fifth generation. Did you know that this is what you wanted to do always?
Our family is pretty close knit because we're all owners of this one company. So it kind of forces us to be that way. And you can just imagine the amount of work that it takes to keep a family that size
Absolutely.
all in one goal. And so every year we have we call it a family reunion, but it's like family reunion business meeting. And so I've been going to those since I was little.
Yeah.
And I thank my parents for that, because they were the ones who always made it a priority to go. And so ever since I was a teenager, that's when I was like, okay, I really want to get into this industry. And I went to school, studied mechanical engineering, and I actually worked for International Paper my first 2 years out of school.
Okay.
Just trying to get my foot in the door of manufacturing. And then I remember distinctly sitting in my office one day saying, like, why am I thinking to myself, why am I doing this for International Paper? I could be working for my family.
That's right.
So that's really what propelled me into this. And I've never looked back. I lived in Louisiana for 3 years. There was a need here for someone in my position. So I moved to Texas. And actually my wife and I are both from the Dallas area. So getting back to Texas for me was kind of nice.
Cool. Very cool. So how many people do you employ there at Corrigan OSB, RoyO'Martin? How many employees are there?
RoyO'Martin, as a whole, we employ 1,400. But Corrigan OSB, we were at 180. And OSB, if you don't know, is fascinating. It takes like 20 people to run the entire plant.
Interesting.
But you have all this staff. So we were at millwrights, electricians too. So we were at 180. And then 2 years ago, we decided to expand. So we're actually almost doubling the plant size right now. It's almost finished construction.
That's great.
But that's bringing an additional 100 jobs. So we've hired 80 of those 100 so far. We're looking for 20 or 30 more. So.
Yeah.
And so what are you looking for in that, in case anybody's hearing?
Well, mechanics,
Okay.
millwrights, electricians. Skilled labor is kind of tough to come by. But outside of those, really just like a production team member. We really don't have any specific, we want the person to be responsible and show up right, but they don't need any specific training before they come to us. We can do all that on site. So if someone, with or without a degree could, wants to be in production and be an operator, we can do that. We can train them from hire. So.
Awesome.
So tell me about expanding this and the impact that it's going to have on our economy.
Well, I think this part of Texas is heavily based in the timber industry. I think we all know that. But we bringing these new jobs to this area is really promoting that industry, and then for this local economy, that's 100 more people that don't have to drive into Houston
100%.
or drive out of this area. They can stay in Lufkin or Corrigan and have a really bright future. Actually, if you're a topped out operator, you can almost make $100,000 without overtime. I mean, given the work that you put in, you can really make a great career out of it.
That's great.
And we're kind of cool too. We have grandfathered insurance through Blue Cross Blue Shield, so we have these really incredible rates where a person can have health insurance for about $30 a month, full coverage.
I need to come work for you then.
Yeah.
We have those really good benefits too, and it really helps being privately owned. We can make those decisions. So
That's great.
That's
it's a great company. I think bringing people locally and keeping them here.
Yeah.
Instead of especially the younger generation going out to the bigger cities. Stay here. We can you can have a good career.
Love that. Let's talk a little bit about sustainability. I know that's probably a big topic for you guys in your industry. I mean, you no way about it. You cut down trees for a living, right? And so at the surface, I'm sure people can feel like that's not a sustainable model, but in reality, it is. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the fact is that wood is a renewable resource.
Mm-hmm.
It's really one of the best renewable resources that we have to our that we can use on a daily basis. So there's kind of a misconception with that, because yes, we do cut down these large amounts of timber to produce this product, but we replant every single bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to, for us as a business to sustain your forestry operations, you have to replant. I mean, it's not an option. So you do that, and you do it with, if you have good forestry practices, you can kind of like take saplings from different of your best trees.
Mm-hmm.
It's not genetic modification by any means. It's taking the best trees, their saplings, and replanting those. So you're taking these good genetics from these already good trees, and you're replanting, and then these trees are growing with better genetics. They get larger faster. And so we've been able to reduce the turnover from like 30 years to like 22 years, on attractive land. All that to say is that, it's a renewable resource that, managed in the correct fashion can really pay dividends, not only to our operations, but to our environment.
Yeah.
So I'm amazed that they can grow that fast within 22 years, because I was going to ask that, like, how fast do they grow? I would have thought it would have taken 50 years.
Yeah, this is pine. So, I mean, they, the real dense wood is going to be old, but with taking these genetics, you're able to do it, in 22 years.
A lot faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course you have a couple of thinnings through that.
Sure.
Interesting.
And, one other thing on sustainability is we're certified by FSC, which is Forest Stewardship Council. And so it's a third-party nonprofit that oversees all of, a company's operations in forestry. And you have to abide by, a wide variety of rules to be deemed sustainable by this company. And really, we're one of the only that I know of in the state of Texas to do that, and Louisiana. So we're very proud of that.
Yeah. So you guys aren't going and just chopping down the Amazon and deforesting the world.
Way.
So you're generally cutting down what you've grown, right? Is that typically how it works?
Yes. Yeah. On our managed land, that's what we do. And then the people that we contract out to bring us wood have to have they don't have to be FSC certified, but we have to deem them responsible.
Gotcha.
For replanting.
Good.
We won't take people who don't replant or anything like
Awesome. So as you're cutting it down, you're planting it again.
Right.
Good to know. I'm glad we can debunk that for some people, that it's not not just cutting down trees. And you wouldn't be in business very long if you were only cutting trees down.
No, unfortunately that's what used to happen 100 years ago.
Right.
Ago, but we've gotten much better.
So let's talk about the company structure and the history. I mean, if this has been in your family for all these years, there's got to be a great story there.
Yeah, my great-great-grandfather, RoyO'Martin Sr., he just had an entrepreneurial spirit, and he was born in Indiana, and shortly thereafter moved to Michigan, but he kind of grew up in poverty. They didn't have much, so it's kind of that, typical American spirit, like entrepreneur, and so growing up, in poverty, he sought to make more for him and his family. So he actually became a teacher at first, and And for a few years after doing that, you know, he wanted more for his family. And so it's kind of interesting. He went to a business office in Michigan and just started knocking on random doors and knocked on a guy. His name was, I can't remember his first name, but his last name was Schaefer. He owned Schaefer Lumber Company. And so that is, in fact, how really he got into the lumber industry to begin with. So worked there for a couple of years, then worked for another lumber company in Memphis, Tennessee. And then he was extremely frugal, saved up roughly $62,000, and in that time was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And searched for a place to own his own operations and landed in Alexandria, Louisiana.
Interesting.
That's where he bought his first mill. And then for 60 years, you know, we were in the lumber industry, so it was dimensional lumber.
Okay.
And in the 80s, we started getting into panels and plywood. And so it is a really cool story. You know, I can't imagine the hardship he went through. But ever since then, it's still family owned, obviously. So, you know, he started it. His sons took it over, their sons took it over, and just kind of trickled down. So now Roy the third is the CEO of the company and is soon to retire, but we've got fourth and I'm fifth still working in this company to sustain it. So
interesting. I love hearing those generational entrepreneurial stories, and it almost always starts with the patriarch of whatever that family was or whoever started that with just one bold decision, right, to go knock on a door, and that happened to be what led to generations of
extremely bold, and I'm always proud to talk about him because it's for anybody, not just my family, just for anybody to do that is really neat. And you think about the hardships like in the 30s, the Great Depression. He continued operating his businesses through that time, and it was extremely tough. Many other businesses shut down, and then World War II was a big one.
Yeah.
So through a lot of hardships, he was able to maintain it.
Very interesting.
Well, we're thrilled to have y'all in our area. We're thrilled to have you as a chamber investor, and we really look forward to celebrating all of your accomplishments. We know you've got a lot going on this year. Y'all are celebrating a lot, and we're proud to help promote that. So thank you for being here today.
Yeah, of course. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. If people are interested in those jobs that you have coming available, where can they find out more about that?
RoyO'Martin.com.
RoyO'Martin.com?
Yep. We've got a freshly renovated website, and we post every single job that comes available on there. And it's got, I think, 3 or 4 now out for Corrigan.
Cool.
So.
Awesome. Well, check that out if you're looking. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for listening to the podcast again this week. We truly appreciate your support. If you'll do us a favor and share this podcast with somebody who you think might find it interesting, maybe they love timber, or they love history, or they love generational businesses, share that with them, and just helps grow the podcast. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.